Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to Trinity United Church, Legon. It's once again the midweek Bible studies that we have. And today we want to talk about something that affects pretty much everyone. It's a life phenomenon that affects all of us. The World Health Organization in 2019 listed burnout as a health condition. The question really is, are you stressed? What do you know about stress? Is there a way you can manage that stress? That is the conversation we are going to have today. And to help us have that conversation today, we have a clinical psychologist who is pretty experienced in dealing with people who have undergone stress. And we are privileged to have her as one of our own people, one who has spoken at a number of conferences and takes a particular interest in how culture and also religion influences how people behave. Ladies and gentlemen, to support us have this conversation, we have Dr. Lily Bobby. Doc, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Great.
It's good to be here.
Great.
Home, actually.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thanks.
Yes, so we'd want to take a word of prayer, after which we'll take a musical interlude from our sister Beauty and our brothers Henry and Richard. Let us pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for this opportunity in your presence to learn about life, even in the light of the various challenges that we go through. It is our humble prayer that you yourself, you are going to steer this conversation. You are going to enlighten us about all the situations that we are prone to and also teach us how to manage them to get the most out of life, even as we seek to live according to Christ. We thank you for an answered prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much, Beauty, Henry, and Richard, for that relaxing music to ease us into this conversation. I guess Dr. Lily is better relaxed to have a chat.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So, Doc, I'm sure the first question on everybody's mind is, what really is stress?
Okay. Obviously, this is a word that we use so much. I mean, and especially lately, you hear it everywhere. I'm so stressed. You're stressing me out. This is a stressful situation.
Yeah.
Obviously, stress is something that is a part of us. It's an experience that all of us go through at some point in time based on the things that are going on around us. But to put a formal definition to it, we can say that it is when our bodies react, either physically or mentally or emotionally, to the challenges that are happening around us. And in particular, we say we feel stressed when our reactions are such that we feel that the resources we have for coping with these challenges are not enough to actually overcome these challenges.
Okay.
Then we would say we feel stressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in essence, from what you're saying, I heard you mention physical, emotional, and psychological. And that leads me to my next question. What are the sources of stress? What are the kinds of situations or events that cause us to be stressed?
Okay. In that sense, we can look at it in maybe two ways.
Okay.
We can look at the causes of stress as internal or external
Okay.
to us. And that's where this idea of physical, emotional, psychological may come in. The things that stress us are usually, we call them stressors.
Okay.
And so these stressors could come from the things that are going on around us and within our environment. I mean, sometimes something as simple as having to sit through traffic to get to work can be so stressful, right? The car horns that are blaring, people shouting, the fact that traffic is stalled, that is an environmental stressor. And it makes us feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But sometimes it could be that the things going on within us, perhaps we have an illness that we are dealing with. And so internally, we don't feel good. And it seems as though every time it keeps building up. And that also can make us feel stressed.
Okay.
So we can look at external things as stressors, but also sometimes things within us can be termed stressors. Daily hassles can pile up.
Yeah.
Things at work that affect us, that initially we may see as challenging, but once we're not able to overcome them, and they keep piling up, and day after day, it is those same challenges that are piling up. Eventually, work stress becomes a thing, and that's where the issue of burnout can come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, it's like you've brought another classification of stress. Initially, we heard you talk about the physical, the emotional, and psychological. Now we are hearing you talk about the internal and also the environmental or the external.
Yeah.
Can we, for instance, take physical, emotional, and psychological, and under each of them, help us to understand what...
Your whole body aches. You have headaches constantly. Your stomach feels unsettled. Those kinds of physical reactions are usually associated with stress. When you cannot pinpoint any medical or physical condition or reason for these things, but you just feel unwell physically, those can be signs that you're feeling stressed.
Okay.
In terms of emotional, you find that maybe you're irritable all the time. The smallest thing sparks anger in you, right? Or, things that normally you would just brush off, they become such weighty matters to you that you feel that they are overwhelming, okay? Some people are tearful suddenly all the time. The smallest thing that then they break down and they're crying. It is a build-up of so many things that are going on and have gone on for some time. Psychologically, you find that the person's mood may be down. They feel sad all the time, or they're feeling anxious all the time, without any specific particular thing that can be pinpointed as the reason for this anxiety. But there's build-up of all these factors that are going on around them, and sometimes within them, that are making them feel stressed. So the reactions to stress can come under these different dimensions, but the things that would trigger it or cause it
differ?
Can be either within us or are in the environment around us.
I'm very much interested in knowing about the emotional bit.
Okay.
Some of the things that cause people to be stressed and they exhibit it, emotionally. Exactly.
Okay. So in terms of emotional reactions, let's assume that you're working in an organization or in an office where your boss is always on your case. right? Nothing you do is good enough. They pick on every small thing that you do. You go the extra mile, whereas the way you see it, your other colleagues don't do as well as you do. And yet you're the one who is always blamed for everything. When you're confronted with a situation like this, day after day, week after week, month after month, it starts to weigh on you such that when you see your boss, you either feel scared, you may feel angry, you may feel teary. You don't want to see this person because they make you feel inadequate or they make you feel worthless. And that then makes you feel stressed out.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, there have been times that people may even wake up and they do not feel like going to work because the environment doesn't excite them or doesn't make them feel like they are at a place which is congenial for them to express themselves.
Exactly.
So that could be
yes, it's a
typical
stressor
example.
then. Yes. So then the workplace has become a stressor for this individual. That's the thought of going there. You find that the person gets stomach cramps or they feel, I mean, even if you think about it the night before, sometimes you can't even sleep when you have to go somewhere that you know will result in a feeling of stress. Sometimes you can't sleep. Or your eating habits change. For some people, they stop eating. They are not able to eat. Some people go the other way. They eat so much, right? So physiologically, all sorts of changes go on in your body when you reach a point where you are feeling stressed, when something is causing the stress. Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people in relationships and marriages may be wondering, can relationships and marriages cause people to be stressed?
Unfortunately, yes. That is also possible. At the end of the day, it's also about how you react to situations.
Yeah.
And so if you're not able to deal with the situations within your relationship or your marriage which are causing the anxiety or the pain or the worry or whatever, it can result in a feeling of stress.
I see.
Yeah. So it's about recognizing what your stressor is. That awareness is always the first step. Once you're able to recognize what it is that is causing or triggering these feelings within me, then you're on the path to finding out what to do about it.
Great. And so, viewers, we are learning here that the things that cause us to be stressed could be both internal or external. And these things, how we exhibit them, could be physiological, it could be physical, it could be also psychological, how we even respond to the various things around us other than we would have on an ordinary day, and also emotionally, how we even express ourselves, all right? And the key thing for us to do at this point is to identify for ourselves what is that thing or what are those things that do stress us, all right?
Yeah.
But let's put it within the context we find ourselves right now globally. There's COVID-19, all right? And a lot of people are now staying at home.
Yeah.
There are a number of parents who are wondering, will my children be infected?
Yeah.
There are a number of people who are losing their jobs. There are some people who are, by virtue of the job that they do, they are at the forefront. We call them the frontliners.
Yeah.
Does COVID-19 or a pandemic of its like or any form of illness cause us to be stressed?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the nature of a pandemic such as this is that there's so much uncertainty. This is something that is novel, it's new. We do not know a lot about it yet. A lot of what we are figuring out as we go along.
Yeah.
Right? And yes, our medical staff have been incredible across the world in managing it. But there's all this uncertainty about what the outcome is, what the future is like. There's fear, as you said. People are worried. What will I do and then I'll get it? Can I really, truly keep myself safe all the time? Even though I follow all of the protocols, what if I make a mistake? There's all of these thoughts going on in our head. And as you also said, people may have lost their jobs or they're working part-time now. They are concerned about their children's schooling. I mean, there's all sorts of thoughts and emotions going on around a pandemic like this. And so obviously, those kinds of things will weigh on us, and they can be very stressful to have to deal with. But it's not only in a pandemic situation. even living with a chronic illness sometimes can be very stressful because you have all of these uncertainties about your care. Sometimes you may be worried about whether you're doing the right thing to make yourself, to continue to keep yourself safe and all that. So just having all this uncertainty around whatever the goal or the target is can create a lot of stressful emotions.
I see. I heard you talk about anxiety a lot, and I also heard you talk about uncertainty, which in essence is indicative of a certain uncertainty causing people to be anxious. Is that the order within or in which we get to be stressed, where we are uncertain about things, and so we get anxious, and that causes us to be stressed? Is that the situation?
It can be.
Okay.
But maybe we can take a step back and let me explain what we call the stress reaction.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when an individual is confronted with something that is stressful or that they feel threatening, we have a certain immediate reaction.
Yes.
Right? Instinctually and biologically, that's how we are hardwired. Let me give an example. If we are sitting here right now and a snake drops down here, it's going to be one of two things. It's either you think of, can I kill it or can I do something to it?
I know what I will do.
Or shall I run?
I'll leave you here.
Exactly. We call that the fight or flight response.
Okay.
The fight or flight response is an almost immediate reaction where you think about, this is a threatening situation. What do I do about it? And in doing that, the body immediately reacts by pumping through adrenaline for you. So if you need to fight it, you have the extra strength. If you need to run, you also have that extra strength. What happens then is that there's muscle tension, there's more blood flow, your pupils are dilated. The body gets you ready to either fight or flee. That is our immediate reaction to a stressful situation or a threatening situation.
Okay.
But imagine if there is no actual physical threat. It's emotional or it's coming from someone else. Your body is appraising it as something threatening, and yet all the fighting and the adrenaline that has gotten ready for you, you can't go and use it necessarily. If that happens over and over and over, it builds up. And therefore, the stress reaction is us having a fight or flight response, not being able to use that immediately, and then it keeps happening, and it keeps happening. Before we know it, we are exhausted.
Okay.
So to answer your question, first, there's something that you will perceive as threatening or stressful or worrisome, and then you react in a certain way. The reaction initially is to try and cope with the situation. When it doesn't work and it keeps building up, then you enter what we call the stressed out state.
Okay.
So that uncertainty is what you are predicting, or you are perceiving that uncertainty as worrisome, as troubling, and that's what is resulting in the stressful reaction.
And so, at a point of assessing the resources available to you to deal with the situation, and you feel that you are incapable, that is what really causes you to be stressed.
Exactly.
That's what the layman can say.
Because when you first identify a situation that is problematic and you are trying to fix it, the challenge, it seems challenging to you, so you are motivated to try and fix it. And you try first, you try second, you try third, you keep trying, and it's not working. You're pulling all of your resources, and whatever is causing that stress is not going away or is not being resolved. Then you're going to start to say, actually, I can't cope with this. And then the overwhelming feelings of anxiety and worry and fear sometimes come into play. So the stress is always about your appraisal of the situation and your ability to handle it.
So let's put it within a very common context. For instance, a young man and a young lady are in a relationship. There are certain things that each of them wants to have changed or bettered about each other. And then they make efforts to have those things changed. And they are unable consistently to realize that, these changes that I expect are not coming up. It is likely that these parties to this relationship are going to get stressed.
they may feel stressed if they appraise that. You see, the appraisal will be about whether, if you see your partner trying and yet failing, you'll appraise it differently from when you don't see him or her trying at all.
Yeah.
You see? So what will make you feel stressed would possibly be when you think the other person, the other party is not willing to do their part, and you are the only one working at the relationship.
Yeah.
Then you might feel a certain level of stress.
Stress.
But if you feel like, well, we're both trying, I'm making mistakes, he's also making mistakes, we're working on it, then you are more likely to feel, to be more patient with the whole process.
Yeah.
And then we wouldn't necessarily say you are stressed.
Okay.
So it's about how you perceive and appraise a situation that makes the difference.
I see. So now, let's talk about the different kinds of people. You know, we have different demographics of people. We have very young people. We have, so let's use even our church context. We have Sunday school. We have junior youth. We have youth fellowship. We have young adults. And we have the men's and women's fellowship, looking at it from a generation perspective. There are also different people of different temperaments. Do these different kinds of people feel stressed the same way?
Okay. All right. I wouldn't say they feel stressed the same way. Even within the same generation, everybody's experience of stress is unique because we all have different backgrounds, we all have different biological makeups, we all have different experiences. So the way we experience stress, even if it is the same event and we both are stressed, the way we experience the stress would differ.
Okay.
But the types or the things that may constitute stress might be different based on the age range that you're in. So, for instance, when you're a child, or in the Sunday school, for instance, most of the time, the things that stress you out are things like doing well in school, exams are coming up, making friends, this person doesn't like me, I don't know what I did to them. It's everyday things. Making sure that you are listening to what mommy and daddy are saying and making sure you're not making mistakes that will get you into trouble. The things that you'll find stressful around that age are surrounding who has some kind of authority over you and making sure you're pleasing them or doing the right thing for them. Once you get into, let's say, youth, you're finishing up university, you're starting out work, the things that are stressful to you change into more of things of, can I get a good job? Making sure that the job is not just good, but it's paying me what I need to be able to live on. We're also thinking about relationships at that point, forming our identities, who we want to be thought of as, what I stand for. Those kinds of things are the things that may be stressful if you feel as though you are not meeting those challenges. And then you go into, let's say, YAF, or an older, middle adult, so to speak.
Okay, even before you get into the middle adult, it's what you just described about the youth stage, what some people call the quarter-life crisis.
Some people are starting to coin that term, right? The quarter-life crisis, the same way we have the midlife crisis later in life, yes. And these days with social media, it's actually more intense for this quarter-life crisis because you're seeing all sorts of people on social media and their lives look good. Nobody puts bad pictures about themselves on social media.
People are looking very bougie, as they say.
Exactly, yes. Right? Very rarely would you see somebody putting up bad pictures of themselves. Generally, we put up pictures of us doing things that are successful, things we are doing well at, things like that. And you're seeing all of that and then you start to appraise yourself and wonder, where am I in this picture? Have I reached that? And that can be so, so stressful because it feels as though you are not matching up to what you are expected to do at that point. Yeah. When you're older and you have your own children and maybe you're a bit more settled in work, then you're starting to think of finances. Can I pay my kids' fees? Are they doing okay? And in fact, sometimes you start thinking, my parents are unwell. Am I able to take care of them? Can I support my partner? Things like that. So the things that you're stressful about, you're stressed about, within different age groups may be different. But the stress experience is something that cuts across our lifespan. Everybody experiences stress.
I see. So Viewers, if you are just joining us, we are talking about stress management. So far, we have here our expert, Dr. Lily Pobi, who is a member of the church. And so far, she has talked us through what stress is, what causes us to be stressed, and the various kinds of people and how they respond differently to stresses. All right? We want to continue into this part where we get to find out how does one identify or get to determine that he or she is stressed.
Okay.
How is one able to make that determination that the situation I find myself in, I am stressed?
Okay. In trying to identify whether you're stressed, it's also useful to look at it in terms of 4 areas.
Yeah.
Right? Physiologically, what do I feel like? What's my body saying to me? How am I reacting physically to things? Emotionally, what are my reactions? Right? Socially, what are my reactions? And then psychologically. So when we talk about physiologically, if you realize that you're getting headaches all the time, or you're getting headaches when you're in a particular kind of situation. For instance, if you're at work, you have headaches, but by the time you get home, it's gone. Or you're around certain people and you feel unwell. They're the kind of people who stress you out. You may just listen to your body. Do you have stomach cramps all the time? Do you have upset stomachs more often than usual? Is your heart racing often? You get palpitations a lot. Does your mouth feel dry a lot? Are you generally feeling anxiety? Physiologically, what is going on with you? When you take note of what you're thinking, you can just cast your mind from the top of your head down to your body and just take note of each part of your body, what it's feeling like. And it's not just, and this is not to say that it's just when you have a headache, it means you are stressed. But it's about assessing whether you're getting these things more and more often.
Yeah.
And is there no actual medical explanation for it?
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you are, let's say, diabetic, and your sugar drops and you get physiological reactions, that doesn't mean you're stressed. It is because of the diabetes. But if you do not have medical explanations or situational explanations for things, and yet physiologically you're feeling a certain way, then you start to think about perhaps there's a stressor in your life that is affecting you. When we talk about socially, people who are stressed are either very irritable, they get angry with other people a lot or easily, and therefore people do not go near them. If you start to notice that, well, I'm losing my temper more often, people are staying away from me, or personally, I'm feeling the need to just stay away from people. I don't want to see people. I don't want to be around people. That's also something that you need to start to think about. Are my children being more irritating to me? Am I yelling at them more often than I used to? What are your social interactions like? Emotionally, do you feel more moody? Are you getting mood swings from one extreme end to the other? Sometimes you're really down, sometimes you're really excited. Are you swinging between these two very easily? Right? Are you feeling as though there's lots of thoughts racing through your mind? You know, you can't quite pin anyone down, any one of them down. So all of these things, it's about assessing yourself, all the aspects of your life, the areas that you live in, right? The things that matter to you. Taking a good look at all of these things and seeing whether or not you are able to then maintain the focus that you need in work, at home, with people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you realize that when you're feeling irritable or you're feeling stressed out generally, your work starts to suffer because you can't concentrate.
That's true.
Right? You don't finish tasks, or even if you do finish them, you do a shoddy kind of job.
Yeah.
Not like you used to do before. The way you work has changed. The way you sleep has changed. These days, you're either feeling sleepy all the time or you can't sleep at all. So assess yourself. Look at it within these 4 parameters and try and identify whether there's been a change for you in any of these or all of these, and then you can get some help for the stress.
I see. I heard you make mention of the fact that some of these stresses, all right, it could even result in you producing substandard work, for
Right.
instance.
Yeah.
And that leads me to my next question. What are some of the negative effects that stress can have on a person?
Yeah. Yes, so and that's a very good example of one
Yeah.
of the effects. Your work will suffer. You'll make mistakes. You won't focus on details or pay attention to details. Your interactions with colleagues or employees will be strained because of the way you react to things.
Yeah.
You may be somebody who previously was very jovial, but suddenly you don't want anybody around. So your interactions with people at work, at home, within society will be different.
Yeah.
So obviously that kind of effect on you will be major, and it will be something that people will start to see. But it also has a physiological effect on you. Stress is linked to lots of cardiovascular diseases.
Okay.
So people who are very stressed are usually warned. There's a risk of developing hypertension, of developing even strokes. People who have diabetes sometimes, it is linked to stress sometimes. So you can also develop chronic illness when you are stressed and it goes untreated for long periods. Emotionally, yes, nobody wants these mood swings. It is very draining for you to be from one end of the mood spectrum to the other all the time. One
Yeah.
moment you're crying, you don't know what's going on, you just can't help the tears. And the next minute you are so elated without being able to pinpoint something. And you're just swinging from one to the other. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And you feel as though, sometimes your memory feels as though you can't quite learn new things. Because somebody tells you something today, and the next moment you swear, no, you didn't tell me this. Because you can't remember that the person ever spoke to you about something
I can
like
relate
that.
to that.
And you are so sure that, no, I would have remembered, and yet it did happen, but you can't remember. So there are memory difficulties, there are concentration difficulties. Even spiritually, sometimes you feel disconnected from God, right? You feel disconnected from fellow Christians because you can't pay attention or focus to do Bible study or to pray for long periods, because your mind is not quiet. It's all over the place. There are all these worries and thoughts intruding, and therefore your relationship spiritually with people and with God can also become strained. So yeah, there are lots of negative effects that stress can have on a person.
I see. So it's so far it sounds all doom and gloom. It appears, but is stress every time bad?
No, it's not.
Okay.
A certain amount of stress is useful.
Okay.
So usually when we hear of stress, it is the negative stress that we are talking about. That is what technically will be called distress. When you are feeling distressed,
Okay.
it is the negative stress, but we use the word stress generally to mean the negative one. But if you think about it, a certain amount of stress is healthy for us because it challenges us.
Okay.
It keeps us on our toes. It makes us want to try new things out. So you meet a challenge, and you are challenged or you are motivated to look at the different ways in which you can solve that challenge.
Okay.
Right? So you want to move to a new house or you want to build your own house. That can be very stressful. But it's also very challenging because you want to be a proud homeowner. And therefore you are looking at where can I mobilize resources to make my dream come true. So stress on its own and stress as a challenging situation is not necessarily bad. The problem is when our resources, the coping resources, get depleted and then it starts to weigh on us.
Okay.
Then it moves from the good stress, what we call eustress, into the bad stress, which is distress.
Okay. So from what you say, can we comfortably then say that stress is a stimulator? Such that it could be immoral. It could either take on a negative side of things or a positive side of things.
Exactly.
Depending on the availability of our coping mechanism or resources to deal with whatever threatening situation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Exactly. So it always starts with first you appraising the situation, seeing whether you find it threatening or challenging. Then the second thing is you appraising your resources for it. The outcome of those appraisals is what will determine whether or not you feel overwhelmed or you feel challenged or motivated to meet it.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. Viewers, if you are joining us just right now, you've missed a lot, but we are still in the conversation. We are talking about stress management We've been able to identify what stress is, what causes them, how we are able to identify whether we are stressed or not. We are going into our last batch of questions where we are seeking to have solutions, all right? So we found out the negativity that stress comes with, and also sometimes stress actually propels us to do better. Now we want to find out, Dr. Lily, how do we manage stress? How should we go about it? If I am a person who is stressed from, say, my work or from home or from a relationship or from a certain social group, how do I go about managing it?
Okay. So as we've said throughout this conversation, it is something that we would definitely come across in one way or the other. So it's important that we learn ways to manage it. So it's a good question to ask. And one of the easy ways that we can remember to manage this is what we call the 4 A's.
Okay.
As in A, B, C, D, the letter A.
Okay.
4 of them. 1, avoid. 2, alter. 3, adapt. And then 4, accept. So I'll go through each of these to give some examples or some thoughts about how that can be done. In terms of avoiding, obviously the first thing you need to do is assess what it is that is stressing you. If it is a situation you can avoid or a person you can avoid, it's best for you to avoid that person. If you know that whenever I'm around my friend Kofi or Ama, I feel stressed.
Or Ernest.
Or I feel a certain kind of pressure, it is best as much as possible to avoid that person or that situation.
Okay.
If you're not able to avoid that situation, then within that context, you try and alter your reactions to what happens in those situations.
Okay.
All right? So when you're doing the avoidance, it means you're not going to look at you are at fault. You're not going to look at blaming the person. It is just about you recognizing that this situation or this person makes me feel stressed, and therefore I need to step away. So that is the first thing, right? But also prioritizing help you to avoid getting stressed.
Okay.
In other words, if you know you have 10 things to get done today, you need to start to think of how do I achieve them, which of them is most important to get done quickly. So you set your priorities, you set your timelines, and you try as much as possible to follow those timelines. It isn't always possible, definitely, because other people may influence the outcomes. But as much as possible, the things that you have control over, you want to focus on those things and make sure that those are the things that you target, and then the stress can be avoided as much as possible. But as I said, sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes it's your job, right? You have a boss who is difficult, he makes you feel stressed. You want to keep the job, and so
you have to deal with the boss.
You have to deal with the situation.
Yeah.
So then you try and alter things. You see, you try and alter things. You can alter how you react to the situation, and you can alter the things that you do with that person. So that the things that you do not need to have the boss around, or whoever it is, or whatever situation is causing the stress, you go around those things. And then you don't put yourself in the position where you will feel stressed.
So that's
right?
alter.
So alter.
Okay.
Alter also means that sometimes you have to make lifestyle changes.
Okay.
For instance, if what is causing you stress has resulted in an illness, a chronic illness, it means you have to make lifestyle changes that will make sure that the stress does not continue and exacerbate the illness.
Okay.
So altering sometimes means changing the way you live your life. The lifestyles, the thing in terms of your diets, in terms of your hobbies, activities that you do, different things that you've identified as being factors in the stressful situation. You try and alter them.
Okay.
All right. Third is what we call adapting.
Adapt.
Sometimes you've tried avoiding, you've tried altering. None of those things may be possible. Then you adapt to the situation.
Okay.
And adapting means changing how you think about the situation and recognizing that your thoughts make a big difference on how you feel about the situation. So when you think positively, you try and be optimistic. You try and look at the bigger picture, the things that are more important to you. you adapt to the situation that you find yourself in. For some people, adapting means finding a catchphrase that works for you.
Okay.
Right? I mean, we say it usually jokingly, the devil is a liar. But when we say that, imagine saying that to yourself constantly. It helps you to recognize the strength that you have from God, who is within you.
Exactly.
You see? So you say that to yourself. When you are met with a challenge, you say, nah, the devil is a liar.
Or greater is he that is in me.
Or greater is he that
than
is
in the world.
You see? You tell yourself, nah, Lily, I can handle this. It's about positive self-talk within your mind. If you have to say it out loud once in a while, that's great. But adapting means that you psych yourself up. You work on yourself and how you are reacting to the situation. And push yourself through in that way. It doesn't mean that the stressor will change. It doesn't mean that the person who is causing the stress or the situation that is causing the stress will go away. It just means that the way you react to the situation will be different. And therefore, it won't affect you as much. Then the last thing is accepting. Accepting means that you recognize that this is a situation that is beyond me. I need some help. So you can talk to someone, get a counselor, get a pastor whom you trust, get someone to talk to and share the burden with the person. It also means that you need to learn and forgive yourself for the mistakes that you may have made. If you didn't meet your work targets, and therefore you're stressed by all the things that are coming up, learn from those mistakes and move forward. Don't keep looking at the things that had happened in the past. Move forward from them. Learn to forgive other people if they have hurt you or their reactions are what contributed to the stress. And then it will help you to manage within the situation as best as you can. So these are the 4 A's generally for helping people to manage or to cope with stressful situations. But other than that, it is, again, like we've said already, is recognizing what stresses you out. That awareness is key. Once you're able to identify the thing that stresses you out, then you can start to work on how you're managing it or how you're reacting to it. Remembering that you need to find a balance between realistically accepting that this is a situation that is difficult and also being realistic with the fact that I can try different things to solve the problem. And then recognizing that you do not have control over everything, but you can control the things within your environment that are within your own control, will help you to deal with situations much smoother.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lily. I mean, it's been a lot of learning. I'm sure now we know this 4 A's mechanism to help us to better deal with the stresses that come our way. I'm sure a lot of us are stressed already with a lot of talk. Let's see if we can get some adaptive help from music that we are going to receive from our sister Beauty, Richard, and Henry. In the meantime, all your comments and questions are welcome on our various social media platforms, especially YouTube and Facebook, via which we are streaming. We are going to address all of them when we come back from this musical interlude. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So we've received a number of questions from our social media platforms. We'll try to see if we can get responses to all of them. We would want to start with a question from our brother Julius Leslie Kwashi, and he uses some very special English. So, yes, he says, looking at the stresses that COVID-19 presents, would we say that ignorance of its threats is bliss? Isn't the awareness of the extent of its threats that stresses us?
I don't think being ignorant about what it is, what it could do, is necessarily the answer. One of the things to remember is that we can have our ways of coping with stresses can sometimes be faulty.
Yeah.
For instance, and not to use this particular incident, but for some people, when they're undergoing something very stressful, they tend to alcohol, right? You start drinking because you just want to forget the situation.
And some eat a lot of chocolate.
And some eat chocolate,
Yeah.
or some people overeat,
Yes.
right? Or some people starve themselves. So coping with the stressor appropriately is also key. So burying your head in the sand about the threats of COVID won't help you to manage it. All it's doing is avoiding the reality, and that doesn't help you to manage the stress. So don't overwhelm yourself and don't make yourself panic by reaching all sorts of sources for information. If you allow yourself to just absorb everything that comes at you when it comes to COVID, you'll find yourself in a perpetual state of panic. Because there are some people who are fear mongers, and they put things online, they put things on social media that are scary, and all it does is create panic.
Yeah.
But finding the correct sources for accurate information and making sure that you're following the protocols as they have been recommended will help you to manage it better than just avoiding it.
But he goes on to say that, or ask, would you say the flurry of information is important?
I would say yes and no, dependent on where it's from.
Okay.
So be careful of where you are accessing the information. Make sure that it's an authoritative source.
Yeah.
And a source that is looking to give facts. That's one key thing. Facts should not be crowded by emotions. And fear is such an emotion that can actually crowd out the facts. So yes, look for the facts, look for the information to inform yourself, to keep yourself up to date on what is needed from you, what the situation is around you. But also do not spend your whole day just looking for information. Right? For a lot of people, they try and limit the times that they read up or listen to news about COVID to 1 hour a day or 30 minutes a day. I've done it for the day. Some people will say for the week, let me just look at what the highlights are at the end of the week. So find a strategy that will help you not to panic, but rather be informed about the situation.
Okay. So Reverend Martin Obing is also watching, and he asked a question, but before that he sets a preamble and says, I yearn to come to church, but the information I have had about the spread of the pandemic makes me fear going to church, since that might increase my exposure to other people. His question is, what should I do? Okay.
I think that in this sense, you have to weigh your reasons for yearning to come to church.
Yeah.
We need that connection. We need that social fellowship as Christians. But you also have a legitimate fear or worry about whether or not you will contract the virus. What you need to do then is to identify what measures your church has put in place to keep you safe. And if all of those measures are in place and you can verify that they are being followed properly, then you can come to church in a space that you know they're doing everything they can to keep us safe. On the other hand, for some people, their way of coping with this yearning to be part of church is to follow the live streams. It means you'll be constantly active. You should be active on the social media platforms, being a part of that fellowship, even if you are at a distance. So it's about weighing what is useful for you. For some people, even if they come here, they follow all the protocols, they'll prefer to sit in a far corner, away from everybody else. And just to know that, well, I came to church, I listened to the word, I was comfortable, but there was nobody else around me. So they might sit on the third floor, right?
Yeah.
Just so they can be part of things, but be assured that they are safe.
They are distant enough.
So yeah, so you need to figure out that yearning, what would need to be put in place for me to believe and to understand that I am safe when I do come to church. And whilst I am exploring this safety, I can still be a part of the church fellowship by being interactive on social media.
I see. And so, Reverend Martin Obeng, I think you have your answer there. And everybody else who has had to deal with the challenges of deciding whether or not to come to church. Trinity United Church has put in a lot of measures to deal with the risk of exposure, all right, such that the church has become one of the safest places actually to be, all right? And so if you are sitting there and you are wondering whether or not to come to church, you have your answer. You should come to church. All right. So Nancy Abunu says, good evening and thanks for this very important talk. Is it possible that you may not be sure of what is really making you feel stressed?
Sometimes some people would say that, yes, I don't know what it is. And that's why it's useful to talk to someone. Yeah. Remember, that was one of our recommendations. Talk to someone. It doesn't necessarily have to be a professional yet. In the beginning, just talk to a trusted friend or relative or somebody whom you can rely on to give you a good sounding board, right? And talk about how you're feeling, what you're experiencing. That might be a way for them to try and help you to unravel what particularly is causing you to feel stressed. But of course, there are times when you need to go for help from a counselor, a psychologist, some professional person who can help you to then unpack all the things that are going on with you to try and identify where the stressor is coming from. So yes, you might be feeling this overwhelming sense, but sometimes we haven't taken note of what is actually causing this feeling. So it helps when we talk it out. For some people, actually, writing it out is also very useful because the hand is slower than the mind. And so as you are writing, it forces your mind to slow down so that you can then write out the things that are actually racing through your mind. And when you look at it later, you'll be able to identify, okay, so this seems to be what is happening with me.
So Nancy Abunu, it is possible.
Yes.
And Doc is also teaching us how to deal with it. So how to be helped to identify it. Or how to be helped to identify it. Our brother Enoch Nyako says, or asks, what habits and practices can we employ to be more resilient to stresses, especially in dealing with social anxiety?
Okay. Definitely the awareness issue comes up again.
Okay.
Find out what it is that makes you feel stressed.
Okay.
And even if it is not happening now, you can think ahead, right? Because as I said, different people experience stress differently. So what might be stressful for someone may not be so stressful for you. So if you are thinking, let's say, how would it feel like for me if I were to lose my job now? And what will I do? Right? Then you can start to think of what resources you might fall on, which people you might be able to go to for help. Start to think of how can you boost your morale or your own feeling of self-worth when you are within a situation like that. Sometimes it's about preparing yourself for eventualities, right? But it's also about once you've gotten through a challenge, reflecting and thinking about, what did I do that helped me? I feel like I did good on this one. What was it that worked? And taking note of those things so that in the future, when you come across situations that are similar or maybe a bit more challenging, you have some backup of things that you can try to do. At the root of it is knowing yourself. Know who you are. Know how you react to things. When you're upset, do you get angry? Do you yell? Do you cry? Do you withdraw? What are your ways of reacting to things? Whether they are pleasant or not. Identify what your way of reacting is, and then figure out how those are strengths So sometimes for some people, it's easy to write, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses?
Okay.
How can I make my weaknesses buffer my strength?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, Enoch, you know how to go about it now. Our sister Nanaya Konedo Japan asks, what are some of the positive coping mechanisms for dealing with stress, especially when the stresses are external and cannot be changed?
Okay.
I guess you bring her back into the 4A mechanism.
The 4A's,
Yeah, well,
exactly, the 4A's. But part of those 4A's is sometimes simple things like keeping busy, right? Maintaining a daily routine, making sure that you prioritize, as I said, and following those priorities lately. Figuring out a routine that works for you so that you can't change the stressor, but you can change how you are dealing within that situation, right? Exercising is a great stress reliever.
Okay.
It's a really great stress reliever because what it does is it releases endorphins. Endorphins are what? Feel-good hormones. They make you feel better about yourself. They help to relax you. They make you feel calmer. So sometimes doing a quick workout when you're feeling stressed is also helpful. One of the things that many people do not do as much is humor. Find humor.
Okay, so I
in
was coming to ask
situations.
about whether comedy helps.
Yes, find humor because laughter also releases endorphins.
Okay.
Right? Find humor within situations. If you can laugh about something, for just those few minutes, your mind is off the situation that is making you feel stressful.
Which means if you have very funny friends,
You
or
can
you don't
tap
have
them.
enough funny friends, you should find a lot more of them.
Or at least find YouTube clips that are funny.
Okay.
Find things that will make you laugh.
Okay.
Right? Just for a few minutes, take your mind off the thing that is stressing you. And sometimes it helps to step back that way. Because when you come back and look at it, suddenly it's not so overwhelming.
Okay. Okay. So I have a very long one here coming from William Dadsy Rule. So he says, we are beginning to adjust to new normals. Physical distancing and its attendant social distancing have meant that without a conscious effort, people are growing farther apart because of the tendency of seeing less of others who are not in our direct circles. How do we manage to keep things normal as much as possible so as not to have relationship stresses with those that matter to us? Okay. This is a very good question, I guess.
Yes, it is. It's a really great question. They've said that we should be using the word physical distancing, not social distancing.
Yes.
Right? Because being apart does not mean you can't be connected.
Yeah.
Okay? It comes back to my main point I keep saying, awareness of what matters to you, what is good for you. Within your relationships, within your marriages, the communication between the two partners is so key for you to be able to be assertive enough to tell your partner that I need you to call me more often because I'm feeling disconnected from you.
Okay.
You should be able to do that with your wife or your husband or your partner. Or to tell them that, let's have a discussion. What is it that you need from me? What do I need from you? How can we make sure that despite the fact that we need to be distant, if you are not married, for instance, if we need to be distant, we can still stay connected. What would it mean? Can we do video calls? Can we meet but at a distance? Can we figure out what it is that works for you as a couple?
Yeah.
Because as he said, there are so many external pressures now that if you do not make sure that the core or the foundation of your relationship is solid, you'll start to find and pick holes in the things that they do, which under normal circumstances wouldn't have bothered you. Okay. So do not let the outside stresses influence how the connection between the two of you are. Make time for each other. Make sure that you're talking to each other. Be upfront about it. Now, the thing that we sometimes need to remember is being upfront or speaking up does not mean you should be rude. Okay. Right? You can say what you need to say that the person is doing that is unpleasant for you without being nasty about it. So learning how to communicate with your partner such that your wishes come across, but you're not blaming them or unduly looking down on them. And the other way as well is a key thing in maintaining their relationship.
Someone puts that in one sentence and says, improve your argument, don't raise your voice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So we have another question from our sister Nanaya Kunedwe Japan. She's asking, is there a link between stress and anxiety disorder? Does stress cause it? In essence, is there a causal relationship between the two?
Okay. There is definitely a relationship. It can be in either direction.
Yeah.
So you could have situations that are stressful and then develop an anxiety disorder as a result.
Okay.
Or the fact that you developed an anxiety disorder from some other factors can make you
Will
feel
get you
stressed
stressed.
or feel overwhelmed. But they're definitely related.
Okay.
Definitely anxiety and stress are very much interconnected.
Okay.
So when you're feeling anxious or you're feeling stressed, the other one will also be present.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for this next question, I feel our brother is trying to pick on someone like former president of the US, Barack Obama. Julius is asking, by the way, does stress make you grow gray hair?
I wonder whether this is more a question for the physicians, right? I know definitely for me, it did. When I'm feeling stressed, suddenly I get a patch of gray hair.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm sure the physicians have some explanation for it, but I don't know what it is.
You have noticed it with yourself.
I did. When I was studying, when I was doing my PhD, I suddenly developed a patch of gray hair.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you probably would have noticed Obama, before he became president,
Yes.
had very black hair. A few years into his presidency,
Yeah.
got all white.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I'm sure there is a physiological explanation for it, but unfortunately, I'm not the one to be able to explain that. I don't know what it is.
Okay, all right. So our brother Kenneth Adukwe asks, when stressed, what foods are to be taken? Are there foods to be avoided?
Great. That's also a great question.
Wow.
Let me start with what you should avoid.
Okay.
Definitely avoid things like sugar, because the effects that sugar have on our body, I think it's a whole topic on its own.
Okay.
So sugar, oil, high acid foods should be avoided as much as possible when you're feeling stressed. What you're looking to do is have more things that will be more soothing on your body. So you're looking at more green and leafy vegetables. You're looking at more things that would soothe you or calm you. Herbal teas, things like that. Things that make you feel calm will be things that you should go to. And things that contain high levels of acid and sugar and oils should, as much as possible, be avoided, because already your body or your system is pressured or is stressed and does not need that additional stressor to deal with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I would ask my last question.
Okay.
I think so far, all the questions or the suggestions have been about how the person undergoing stress will deal with it or identifies it and all of that. How do we as a society, as a church, as a people, as a family, support people who are undergoing stressful situations?
Okay. For me, the number one thing is we should be careful not to be blaming people. You hear a lot of people say, but you, this simple thing and you are stressed out. What about if it was this or if it was that? Right? Everybody's feelings or reactions are valid for them.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's different from what you would react like doesn't make it any less valid. So being supportive means you need to show empathy. You need to try and put yourself in their shoes and to understand not necessarily the situation, but to understand their reaction and their feelings. Putting yourself in their shoes means, how would I react if something made me feel this bad?
Yeah.
Not necessarily if I was in that situation. If you can't relate on that level, try and relate to the reactions, the emotional reactions that they are having. We should stop being judgmental about people. We should stop feeling as though, or acting as though the people just need to get over it. Feeling stressed or being anxious about a situation, it's a very troubling circumstance for somebody to be in. And therefore, they do not need to feel belittled. They do not need to feel as though they are weak.
Yes.
Because they are not able to handle such a situation. They need to feel as though you hear them, You hear their worries, and you are there to support them in whatever ways. It's very important, especially with our children. Usually, we tend to dismiss stress or anxiety in our children, but we need to start to listen to what they are saying and to validate what they are saying, even when we can see a way out.
Yeah.
And then we guide them to see that same solution.
Yeah.
But you listen and you validate what they're saying. You don't make them feel like, oh, don't worry about it. They are actually very worried about it.
Yeah.
So you don't dismiss the person's worries.
So you realize a number of people get into situations where they start even developing suicidal tendencies because they feel, well, what they are undergoing or going through, they cannot talk to anybody about it, and nobody understands them, and nobody can relate to their situation. And so they are even better off dead than alive because they feel socially disconnected.
Exactly.
All right. We would want to use this as our concluding comment, even as we take your final words.
Sure.
Nana Oyeneti says, everyone goes through stress of one kind or another. Thank you for teaching us how to manage it.
Thank you.
Yes, so thank you so much, Dr. Lily. Would want to take your final words, even as we wrap up.
Okay. I think generally what I can say is that, stress is something that we should be ready for. It can come in different ways, but we are not inadequate when it comes to stress. We all have resources that we can pull on, and beyond that, we have people around us that we can rely on. So if you do need help, if you do need support, please do not hesitate. Get in touch with someone. It doesn't have to be a professional.
Having gone beyond the standard time that we normally do have it. But we believe that we have been blessed. We have learned a lot. I'm sure this is not the end of this discussion around stress management. The production team is going to bring us subsequent editions on it. But we would want to pause here and take a word of prayer, even as we close for today. Let us pray. Father, we thank you so much for the well of knowledge that you have exposed us to, that we have drawn from. It's our humble prayer that, Father, you are going to enable us to live lives that take cognizance of the various things that could stress us. But instead of throwing our hands in despair, thinking of it as a situation or situations of doom and gloom, we are going to tap into the right resources, you being the ultimate, and the various human resources you've made available to us, that we'll learn to adapt, avoid, alter, or even accept the situations that come our way. It's our humble prayer that you are going to keep us in one piece, that stress will not overwhelm us, but we shall take cognizance of the fact that greater is he who is in us than is in the world. We thank you for an answered prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So we share in the words of the grace, saying, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us now and forevermore. Amen.
Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his his face